Have you ever wondered what happens when someone is gifted with everything, power, wisdom, wealth, and even the love of God, only to stand on the precipice of losing it all due to very human weaknesses? The story our channel is about to share with you today isn't just an epic historical account. It's a profound lesson about the self, about fateful choices, and the sweet temptations that can bury an entire empire. We'll pull back the curtain of the past, following the life of a king who was once the epitome of supreme wisdom, who erected magnificent structures, yet whose destiny ultimately veered in a direction no one anticipated. And I promise you, the end of this story, the details hidden behind the glory and tragedy, will make you reflect deeply, perhaps even change how you view power and temptation. Before we journey back in time together, could you share a little? Let us know where you're listening to this story from and what time it is where you are right now. It's wonderful to know we're exploring ancient mysteries together, even across different time zones and spaces. Comment below, and now let's begin our journey into an ancient kingdom where legends were woven. Our story begins in the twilight years of a glorious reign, as the radiance of King David, national hero, illustrious monarch, psalmist of immortal hymns, began to fade. He who was once a mighty warrior, Maidan-e-Jung, battlefield, a wise leader who brought the nation of Israel to the zenith of prosperity and fear of God, was now but a pale shadow of his former self. The health of the aging king deteriorated, quantity on hand, ka-wat-omumi, general strength, like a candle in the wind, flickering within the magnificent palace nestled in the holy city of Jerusalem. In gilded chambers upon an exquisitely carved ivory bed, King David lay, his body growing frailer by the day. An icy chill, not of Jerusalem's winter, but a coldness from deep within, relentlessly consumed him. No matter how many warm woolen blankets or precious Persian rugs his attendants draped over him, warmth seemed unable to reach his aged frame. The flame of life within him appeared to be slowly dying. The courtiers who had once witnessed David's majesty now saw his frailty with hearts. Al-Fariq, team, group, but here implies deep sorrow and worry. They exchanged concerned glances, and then a close advisor boldly proposed, "Your Majesty, your health grows weaker, and we are gravely concerned. Permit us to find a young virgin maiden from across the kingdom, one who will devotedly care for and attend to your Majesty. Her youthful warmth as she lies in your Majesty's embrace might perhaps dispel the chill and bring you comfort." This suggestion, though unusual, held a glimmer of hope, and so delegations were dispatched, fanning out across the lands of Israel, from lush valleys to arid hillsides, in search of a young woman who could warm the aging king. After many days, they found a maiden named Abishag from the village of Shunem. She possessed a pure, radiant beauty, like a lily in the morning dew, her hair as dark as ebony, her eyes as clear as a mountain spring. Her beauty lay not only in her appearance, but also in the gentleness and virtue that emanated from her. Abishag was brought to Jerusalem and into the palace. She was entrusted with the care of King David, staying by his sickbed, using her own body heat in an attempt to ward off the cold that afflicted him. She was diligent, thoughtful, attending to his every meal and sleep. She lay in the king's arms, a fragile source of life, a final comfort. However, the scriptures record a crucial detail. She ministered to the king and took care of him, but the king did not know her intimately. Though Abishag was beautiful and devoted, the fires of passion within David had long since died. His strength was depleted. Her presence was merely to provide physical warmth and perhaps a measure of peace to the soul of the king in his final days. Meanwhile, beyond the silent walls of the royal bedchamber, where King David wrestled with old age and illness, a political storm was quietly brewing, fierce and full of ambition. The struggle for the throne, ever latent in any dynasty, now began to erupt. The instigator of this power grab was none other then Prince Adonijah, one of King David's sons, born to Haggith. Adonijah was a handsome, comely man, possessing royal blood and a burning thirst for power. Seeing his father's health failing and his mind no longer as sharp as it once was, Adonijah believed his time had come. Exploiting the chaotic situation and the lack of a clearly designated successor, at least in the public eye at the time, Adonijah put himself forward, proclaiming himself king. He did not wait for his father's permission or blessing, nor did he heed any divine arrangements David might have privately intended. To solidify his audacious claim, Adonijah organized a lavish feast, an unofficial yet ostentatious coronation ceremony. He slaughtered fattened sheep and oxen for sacrifices, and invited all his brothers, the other princes, and all the men of Judah who were royal officials. Influential military commanders, courtiers holding key positions, those Adonijah believed would support him, were all invited. Wine flowed freely, music resounded, and a murmur of "Long live King Adonijah" began to spread. Adonijah aimed to create a fait accompli, to use the momentum of the crowd and the support of the nobility to force recognition of his new status. However, in his shrewd yet flawed calculations, Adonijah deliberately omitted several key figures whom he knew were fiercely loyal to King David and unlikely to side with him. These included Nathan the prophet, David's confidant and spiritual advisor, who never hesitated to point out the king's failings. Also uninvited was Benaiah son of Jehoiada, a valiant commander of the elite Pelethites and Cherethites, the king's loyal bodyguard. Other mighty warriors who had fought Sheng Si Yu Gong, share life and death with David, were also excluded. Most significantly, Adonijah did not invite his half-brother, Solomon, David's son, with Bathsheba. This was a risky move, for Solomon, though young, was favored by God and had been secretly promised the succession by King David himself. News of Adonijah's self-coronation feast quickly reached the remaining loyalists. The first to act was Nathan the prophet. With political acumen and unwavering loyalty, Nathan recognized the imminent danger to the kingdom and the rightful heir. He immediately went to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, the wife King David had once deeply loved, and to whom he owed a profound debt. Nathan spoke to Bathsheba with urgency. "Have you not heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king, and David our Lord does not know it? Now, therefore, come, let me give you advice, that you may save your own life and the life of your son Solomon. Go in at once to King David and say to him, 'Did you not, my lord the king, swear to your servant, saying, Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? Then, while you are still speaking there with the king, I also will come in after you and confirm your words.'" Bathsheba, an intelligent and decisive woman, understood the gravity of the situation immediately. She knew that if Adonijah consolidated his power, her life and Solomon's would hang by a thread. Without hesitation, she went into the king's chamber, where King David lay in bed, with Abishag the Shunammite attending him. Bathsheba bowed and paid homage to the king, her face etched with worry and urgency. The king asked, "What do you desire?" Bathsheba replied, her voice choked with emotion, "My lord, you swore to your servant by the Lord your God, saying, 'Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne.' And now, behold, Adonijah is king, although you, my lord the king, do not know it. He has sacrificed oxen, fattened cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the sons of the king, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army, but Solomon your servant he has not invited. And now, my lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you, to tell them who shall sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise it will come to pass, when my lord the king sleeps with his fathers, that I and my son Solomon will be counted offenders, and our fate will be tragic." While Bathsheba was still speaking, Nathan the prophet entered according to the prearranged plan. The servants told the king, Nathan the prophet is here." He came in before the king and bowed with his face to the ground. Nathan said, "My lord the king, have you said, 'Adonijah shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne'? For he has gone down this day, and has sacrificed oxen, fattened cattle, and sheep in abundance, and has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and Abiathar the priest. And behold, they are eating and drinking before him, and saying, 'Long live King Adonijah.' But me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon, he has not invited. Has this thing been brought about by my lord the king, and you have not told your servants who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him?" The words of Bathsheba and Nathan were like alarm bells, rousing King David from the torpor of old age and sickness. Though his body was weary, the mind of the once great monarch still possessed the necessary decisiveness and clarity. He remembered his oath to Bathsheba, remembered God's revelation concerning his successor, the threat of civil war, the division of the kingdom, and Solomon's tragic fate became starkly clear. King David spoke, his voice weak yet full of authority. "Call Bathsheba to me." When Bathsheba returned and stood before him, David solemnly declared, a proclamation of destiny, "As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my soul out of every adversity, as I swore to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, saying, 'Solomon your son shall reign after me, and he shall sit on my throne in my place. Even so will I do this day.'" Then King David commanded his most trusted advisers, "Call to me Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada." When they came before the king, he said, "Take with you the servants of your lord, and have Solomon my son ride on my own mule, and bring him down to Gihon, and let Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet anoint him there as king over Israel. Then blow the trumpet and say, 'Long live King Solomon.' You shall then come up after him, and he shall come and sit on my throne, for he shall be king in my place, and I have appointed him to be ruler over Israel and over Judah." Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, with utmost loyalty responded to the king, "Amen. May the Lord, the God of my lord the king, say so too. As the Lord has been with my lord the king, even so may he be with Solomon, and make his throne greater than the throne of my lord King David." Events unfolded swiftly and decisively. Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah, along with the Pelethites and Cherethites, obeyed the king's command. They had Solomon, then believed by Jewish tradition to be only about 12 to 20 years old, though some scholars suggest older, certainly very young, ride on King David's own mule, a symbol of the official transfer of power, and brought him down to the Gihon spring, a sacred place where important ceremonies often took place. At Gihon, Zadok the priest took the horn of oil from the tabernacle, holy oil consecrated for anointing ceremonies, and anointed Solomon. That sacred moment marked God's choice and royal investiture. Immediately afterward, trumpets blared throughout the valley, shattering the tense atmosphere. All the people present shouted in unison, "Long live King Solomon! Long live King Solomon!" The cheers, the sound of flutes, and the music of instruments blended, creating a joyous sound that shook the earth, as if the very ground trembled with their elation. Meanwhile, where Adonijah was feasting with his guests, his conspiracy seemed on the verge of success. They were eating and drinking merrily, toasting each other, when suddenly chaotic sounds from Gihon reached them. Joab, the veteran general who had sided with Adonijah, heard the sound of the trumpet and asked, "What is the meaning of this uproar in the city?" While Joab was still speaking, Jonathan, son of Abiathar the priest, who was also at Adonijah's feast, rushed in. Adonijah tried to reassure him, "Come in, for you are a worthy man, and bring good news." But Jonathan's expression signaled the opposite. Jonathan answered, his voice full of alarm, "No, indeed, our lord King David has made Solomon king. The king has sent with him Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and the Cherethites and the Pelethites. and they have had him ride on the king's mule, and Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet have anointed him king at Gihon, and they have gone up from there rejoicing, so that the city is in an uproar. This is the noise that you have heard. Solomon also sits on the throne of the kingdom. Moreover, the king's servants have come to congratulate our Lord King David, saying, May your God make the name of Solomon more famous than yours, and make his throne greater than your throne. And the king bowed himself on the bed and said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has granted someone to sit on my throne this day, my own eyes seeing it. This devastating news struck Adonijah's guests with terror. The joyful feast instantly dissolved. The seemingly solid support for Adonijah vanished into fear. Without a word, all who had just been hailing Adonijah trembled, hastily rose, and fled, each going his own way, abandoning the self-proclaimed king. Adonijah, from the height of ambition, plummeted into the abyss of despair. He knew his life was now entirely in the hands of Solomon, the brother whose throne he had tried to usurp. In panic, Adonijah fled to the tabernacle, to the holy altar, and grasped its horns, an act symbolizing a plea for sanctuary and divine mercy. He hoped the sanctity of the place would shield him from the new king's wrath. Word was brought to Solomon, Behold, Adonijah fears King Solomon, for behold, he has laid hold of the horns of the altar, saying, Let King Solomon swear to me first that he will not kill his servant with the sword. Solomon, the newly anointed young king, displayed his initial wisdom and clemency. Instead of ordering immediate punishment, Solomon said, If he will show himself a worthy man, not one of his hairs shall fall to the earth, but if wickedness is found in him, he shall die. Then King Solomon sent, and they brought Adonijah down from the altar. Adonijah came and bowed down to King Solomon, and Solomon said to him, Go to your house. This initial clemency from Solomon towards Adonijah demonstrated a kind heart, a desire for reconciliation, and an avoidance of unnecessary bloodshed upon ascending the throne. However, it was also an implicit warning. Adonijah's life depended entirely on his future conduct. The chance was given, but fate remained open, contingent on Adonijah's own choices. Yet Adonijah's ambition seemed an unquenchable fire. After Solomon officially ascended the throne, consolidated his power, and King David had passed away, Adonijah once again harbored dark schemes. He did not rebel directly, but chose a more subtle, yet equally perilous path. Adonijah approached Bathsheba, King Solomon's mother, knowing her influence over the king. He appeared humble, almost pleading, seeking her help. When Bathsheba asked, Do you come peacefully? Adonijah replied, Peacefully. Then he said, You know that the kingdom was mine, and all Israel expected me to reign. However, the kingdom has turned about and become CMD, my brothers, for it was his from the Lord. Now I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me. Bathsheba replied, Speak. Adonijah then requested, Please ask King Solomon, he will not refuse you, to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. This request, seemingly a personal desire, a search for solace after losing the throne, was understood very differently by Bathsheba and especially by Solomon. Abishag, though King David had not been intimate with her, was still considered part of the late king's harem. Marrying a concubine or attendant of the previous king, by ancient Near Eastern custom, could be interpreted as an assertion of succession rights, an indirect claim to power, or at least a share in the royal inheritance. It was a subtle yet undeniable challenge to Solomon's authority. Bathsheba, perhaps too trusting of Adonijah's feigned sincerity, or simply wishing to maintain peace, agreed to convey the message. She went to King Solomon. The king rose to meet her, bowed to her, then sat on his throne and had a throne set for the queen mother at his right hand. Bathsheba said, I have a small request to make of you. Do not refuse me. King Solomon replied, Make your request, my mother, for I will not refuse you. Bathsheba then said, Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to Adonijah your brother as his wife. Upon hearing this request, King Solomon, with his sharp intellect, saw through Adonijah's entire scheme. The king's anger flared not over a personal request, but over his brother's obstinacy and insatiable ambition. Solomon responded to his mother, his voice stern and tinged with disappointment. "And why do you ask Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom also, for he is my older brother, and on his side are Abiathar the priest and Joab the son of Zeruiah." Solomon understood that Adonijah's desire to marry Abishag was not merely romantic but a cunning political move. It was an implicit declaration of power, a rekindling of past disputes, a seed that could sow instability in the kingdom. Abishag, who had cared for David in his final days, who had warmed the late king, held a certain symbolic significance. Possessing her could be construed as possessing a part of David's legacy. This time Solomon had no choice but to act decisively. His clemency had been exploited, and the king's patience had run out. King Solomon then swore by the Lord, saying, "God do so to me, and more also, if Adonijah has not sat simple past of seek this thing against his own life. Now therefore, as the Lord lives, who has established me and set me on the throne of David my father, and who has made me a house as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death this day." Immediately King Solomon sent Benaiah son of Jehoiada, a loyal and decisive commander. Benaiah carried out the order, and Adonijah was executed. Adonijah's death served as a costly lesson, a prime example of ill-timed, baseless ambition and blind obstinacy leading to a tragic end. Solomon's first pardon had shown mercy and a desire for stability. But when that mercy was challenged and rebellious intent resurfaced, the king did not hesitate to execute justice sternly to protect his throne and the peace of the land. With the threat from Adonijah eliminated and his power consolidated, Solomon faced the immense responsibility of ruling and developing the kingdom his father David had painstakingly built. The weight of the royal enterprise rested heavily on the young king's shoulders. Solomon was deeply aware that to maintain stability, prosperity, and the fear of God among his people, he needed more than just military strength or political savvy. He needed something more divine. One night at Gibeon, where the tabernacle and the great high place were located, after Solomon had offered 1,000 burnt offerings to God, the Lord appeared to him in a dream. In that glorious and awe-inspiring dream, God said to Solomon, "Ask what I shall give you." This was a priceless offer, a golden opportunity any king would covet. Solomon could have asked for endless wealth to build even grander palaces. He could have asked for absolute power to subdue all enemies and expand his borders. He could have asked for glorious victory on the battlefield or a long, disease-free life. Yet the young king, with a humble heart and a profound sense of his duty, chose none of these. Instead, Solomon addressed God with words full of reverence and sincerity. "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne, as it is this day. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father, although I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in, meaning lacking experience in ruling. And your servant is in the midst of your people, whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant therefore an understanding mind, a hearing heart, able to discern, to govern your people, that I may distinguish between good and evil. For who is able to govern this, your great people?" Solomon's plea pleased the Lord. He was pleased that Solomon had not asked for long life, riches, or the lives of his enemies, but for wisdom to govern God's people justly and righteously. God said to Solomon, because you have asked this and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right. Behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days. And if you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your days. When Solomon awoke, he knew it was no ordinary dream. It was a revelation, a sacred promise from God himself. His heart overflowed with gratitude and a renewed sense of responsibility. And indeed, Solomon's extraordinary wisdom quickly became legendary, renowned far and wide. One of the most famous stories illustrating Solomon's superior wisdom, recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, is the case of two women fighting over a newborn baby. This story is not only an example of judicial skill, but also a profound insight into human psychology and sacred maternal love. The story goes that two women who were prostitutes lived together in the same house. Both gave birth around the same time. But then tragedy struck. During the night, one of the babies died because its mother had accidentally rolled over on it in her sleep. The mother whose child had died, in her grief and perhaps selfish desperation, secretly swapped her dead child with the living child of the other woman, while the latter was sound asleep. The next morning, when the mother whose child had been swapped awoke to nurse her baby, she was horrified to discover the child beside her was dead. But as she looked closer in the morning light with the anguished heart of a mother, she realized it was not her child. The dead infant did not bear the familiar features she had lovingly memorized. A fierce argument filled with tears and bitter accusations erupted between the two women. The bereaved mother insisted the living child was hers, and the dead child belonged to the other. The other woman, the one who had swapped the babies, equally vehemently asserted the opposite, that the living child was her own and the dead one belonged to her housemate. Neither would yield, and the matter eventually reached King Solomon for judgment. Before the throne, in the solemn silence of the court, the two women continued their dispute. One wept, "My lord, this living child is mine, and the dead child is hers." The other was no less adamant, "No, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine." King Solomon listened carefully to their words, observing every gesture, every glance. He saw desperation in one woman's eyes and obstinacy in the other's. After a period of silent deliberation that left the entire court breathless, King Solomon spoke, a judgment that seemed cold and cruel. This one says, "The living child is mine, and the dead child is yours." And the other says, "No, the dead child is yours, and the living child is mine. Bring me a sword." When a sword was brought, the king commanded, "Divide the living child in two, and give half to the one and half to the other." This sudden and horrific verdict stunned everyone present. But in that very moment, the true mother's instinct and love surged forth. The woman who was the real mother of the living child, her heart as if pierced by a knife, could not bear the thought of her child being killed, even to prove the truth. She quickly fell to her knees, sobbing, and pleaded with the king, "Oh, my lord, please give her the living child, and by no means kill him. Let him live, even if I cannot raise him. I am willing." Meanwhile, the other woman, the one who had callously swapped the children, seemed to agree with the king's judgment, or perhaps out of selfishness and jealousy, she said, "Let it be neither mine nor yours. Divide it." Instantly, King Solomon knew who the true mother was. Maternal love cannot be faked. Only a birth mother could sacrifice her own rights, even accept losing her child, to preserve the life of her beloved offspring. The king solemnly declared, "Give the living child to the woman who begged for its life. Do not kill it. She is its mother." All Israel present there, and those who later heard the story, were amazed and awestruck by King Solomon's extraordinary wisdom. They realized that the king's wisdom truly came from God, for he could see into the human heart, distinguish truth from falsehood, and dispense justice so skillfully. Solomon's reputation for wisdom thereafter spread even further beyond the borders of Israel, reaching the ears of monarchs and sages in neighboring lands. Not only did Solomon resolve complex domestic cases, but his wisdom and fame also attracted the attention of powerful figures from distant kingdoms. One of the most intriguing and colorful stories of his reign is the mysterious and captivating encounter between him and the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba was a legendary figure believed to be the ruler of a wealthy and powerful kingdom in the south, possibly in the region of modern-day Ethiopia or Yemen. Her kingdom was renowned for gold, precious spices, and rare gemstones. Hearing of King Solomon's immense fame, especially his divinely bestowed super-intellect, as well as the wealth and prosperity of the kingdom of Israel, the Queen of Sheba was immensely curious and admiring. She decided to make an official visit to Jerusalem, not only to strengthen diplomatic ties, but also to witness firsthand and test the wisdom of this renowned king. The Queen of Sheba's journey was no simple excursion. She arrived in Jerusalem with an exceptionally large and splendid entourage, bringing countless camels laden with precious gifts, fine spices like frankincense and myrrh, a vast quantity of pure gold, and innumerable sparkling gemstones. Her arrival in the Israelite capital caused quite a stir, showcasing the wealth and power of the kingdom of Sheba. Upon meeting King Solomon, the Queen of Sheba did not hesitate to pose a series of perplexing questions, intricate riddles, and challenging problems to test the limits of the intellect for which Solomon was so celebrated. She wanted to verify for herself whether the rumors were true. However, King Solomon did not disappoint the Queen of Sheba. The scriptures record that Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing too hard for the king that he could not explain to her. Every riddle, no matter how complex, every problem, no matter how convoluted, was analyzed and answered by Solomon with clarity and insight, leaving the queen astonished and full of admiration. After witnessing Solomon's wisdom in answering her questions, the Queen of Sheba also beheld the magnificent palace the king had built, the arrangement of his lavish banquets, the service of his officials, their splendid attire, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he presented in the temple of the Lord. All of it surpassed her wildest imagination. She was completely overwhelmed and exclaimed her admiration from the depths of her heart. "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true, but I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. And behold, not even half was told me. Your wisdom and prosperity exceed the fame of which I heard. Happy are your men. Happy are these your servants, who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loved Israel forever, he has made you king to do justice and righteousness." To express her admiration and strengthen friendly relations, the Queen of Sheba presented King Solomon with extraordinarily valuable gifts: 120 talents of gold, estimated at over 4 tons of pure gold, a very large quantity of rare spices, such as had never before been seen in Israel, and countless precious stones. In response to her generosity, King Solomon also gave the Queen of Sheba everything she desired and asked for, along with other royal gifts befitting the king's own generosity. He also shared with her his knowledge, insights, and wisdom. The meeting between King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba became a legend, a unique moment in history where wisdom, power, and wealth converged. The story of admiration, friendship, and the sharing of knowledge has been passed down through generations. According to some traditions, particularly in Ethiopian lore, the relationship between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba went even further. They are said to have had a son together named Menelik I, who later returned to Ethiopia and founded a royal dynasty that lasted for thousands of years, bringing with him, according to their tradition, the sacred Ark of the Covenant. While the historicity of this detail is debated, it shows the profound impact of this meeting on the culture and history of many peoples. In other Arab legends, the Queen of Sheba, often called Bilqis, is depicted as an incredibly beautiful woman, but with a strange characteristic such as having goat-like feet, a sign of magic or demonic influence. When she came to Solomon, thanks to his divinely granted super-intellect, the king helped her overcome this flaw, transforming her into a queen perfect in both beauty and wisdom. Though legendary details may vary, the encounter between King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba is a powerful testament to the fame and charisma of the Israelite king. It was not just a meeting between two monarchs, but also a confluence of cultures, an exchange of knowledge, and mutual recognition between kingdoms. The Queen of Sheba returned to her own land with deep respect for Solomon, and perhaps she also brought back knowledge of Israel's religion, laws, and culture to apply and enrich her own kingdom. In response to God's grace and choice, and to fulfill the last wishes of his father, King David, Solomon dedicated all his heart and the kingdom's resources to constructing a magnificent edifice, a symbol of faith and God's presence among the Israelites, the Temple in Jerusalem. This structure was not only an architectural masterpiece, but also the center of spiritual life, the heart of Israelite faith for centuries. King David, Solomon's father, had long cherished the desire to build an eternal house for the Lord. He had prepared a vast quantity of precious materials: gold, silver, bronze, iron, cedar wood, and precious stones. However, God had told David that because his hands had shed too much blood in battle, it would not be him, but his son, a man of peace, who would undertake this sacred task. Solomon, with his peaceful and prosperous reign, was the chosen one. The construction of the temple began in the 4th year of Solomon's reign. It was the most colossal and intricate architectural undertaking of its time. Solomon mobilized a massive labor force, including tens of thousands of Israelites, for general labor and tens of thousands of foreigners, as stonecutters, carpenters, and for other heavy tasks. He also collaborated with Hiram, king of Tyre, a port city famous for its skilled craftsmen and its supply of precious cedar wood from Lebanon. Hiram provided cedar, cypress wood, and talented artisans to help Solomon realize this project. The temple was built on Mount Moriah, the traditional site where Abraham had prepared to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice, and also the location of the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, which David had purchased. This location held deep historical and spiritual significance. The materials used for the temple were of the highest quality. Large stones were quarried and dressed at the quarry site so that no sound of hammer or chisel was heard at the construction site, signifying reverence. Cedar wood from Lebanon, renowned for its durability and fragrance, was used for paneling walls and ceilings. Cypress wood was used for flooring. The entire interior of the temple, from walls and ceilings to the floor, was overlaid with pure gold. Exquisite carvings of cherubim, flowers, and palm tree motifs adorned every surface, creating a sacred and magnificent space. The temple was divided into 3 main parts: the vestibule, Ulam, the holy place, Hekal, and the most holy place, Debir, or Holy of Holies. The most holy place was the most important chamber, a perfect cube where the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord was kept. Inside the most holy place, Solomon had 2 colossal cherubim made of olive wood, 10 cubits, about 15 feet high, and overlaid with gold. The wings of these cherubim spread out, overshadowing the Ark of the Covenant. The construction of the temple lasted 7 long years, with tens of thousands laboring day and night. When completed, the Temple of Jerusalem emerged like a precious gem, shining splendidly, the pride of the Israelites, and a symbol of God's glorious presence. The dedication of the temple was an event of immense solemnity and grandeur. Solomon summoned all the elders of Israel, the heads of the tribes, the chiefs of the ancestral houses, and all the people to Jerusalem. The Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, symbolizing his presence and covenant with his people, was solemnly carried by the priests and Levites from the city of David and placed in the most holy place of the temple under the wings of the cherubim. When the ark was in place and the priests came out of the holy place, a cloud of God's glory filled the temple, so much so that the priests could not stand to minister, for the glory of the Lord filled his house. It was a clear sign that God had accepted and taken up residence in the temple Solomon had built for him. During the dedication ceremony, King Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord, in front of the whole assembly of Israel, spread his hands toward heaven, and offered a long, moving, and meaningful prayer. He implored God to hear the prayers of the Israelites when they turned towards this temple to call upon him, wherever they might be, in whatever circumstances, when they sinned and needed forgiveness, when they faced hardship, war, famine, or disease. He also prayed for foreigners who, hearing of the Lord's name, would come to this temple to pray, asking God to hear them too, so that all peoples of the earth might know his name and fear him, as Israel did. As Solomon's prayer concluded, a miracle occurred. Fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices on the altar, and the glory of the Lord once again filled the temple. All the Israelites saw the fire come down and the glory of the Lord upon the temple. They bowed down with their faces to the ground, worshipped, and gave thanks to the Lord, saying, "For he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever." After completing the temple, Solomon proceeded to build his own royal palace. If the temple was the symbol of faith, the palace was the symbol of the kingdom's power and wealth. This palace was also constructed with the most precious materials, on an even grander scale than the temple, and took 13 years to complete. It included several complex structures, such as the House of the Forest of Lebanon, so named for its many cedar pillars, the Hall of Pillars, the Throne Hall, where the king judged, and separate palaces for the king and for the queen, Pharaoh's daughter. Solomon's royal palace was an architectural masterpiece, showcasing opulence, splendor, and the pinnacle of artistic and construction techniques of the era. It was not only the royal residence, but also the administrative center, the venue for receiving foreign dignitaries, and a powerful testament to the prosperity and prestige of Solomon's dynasty. The splendor of a glorious reign was reflected in every stone, every timber of these magnificent structures. King Solomon is remembered by posterity not only for his supreme wisdom, magnificent architectural works, and unparalleled wealth, but also for another aspect of his personal life, a long list of marriages with countless wives and concubines. The scriptures record that he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. These marriages, to some extent, were not merely a pursuit of love or sensual gratification, but also an important diplomatic tool. In the complex political landscape of the ancient world, royal marriages were often used to establish and strengthen political, military, and commercial alliances with neighboring kingdoms. By marrying princesses from other nations, Solomon created binding relationships that helped ensure national security, expand influence, and promote trade, contributing to Israel's stability and prosperity. However, these multinational marriages also brought unintended consequences. The foreign wives, hailing from different cultures and faiths, brought their own gods and worship practices into Israel. Gradually, these influences began to erode Solomon's own loyalty to the God of Israel, who had given him everything. Among Solomon's many wives, the daughter of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was a prominent and influential figure. This marriage was a clear testament to Solomon's power and international prestige, as Egypt was an ancient and mighty empire. Pharaoh's willingness to give his daughter in marriage to the king of Israel showed the recognition and respect Egypt accorded Solomon's kingdom. To demonstrate special favor, Solomon even built a separate magnificent palace for this Egyptian princess, located near the temple and his main palace. This indicated she was treated with great respect and held a special status in the harem. Besides the Egyptian princess, Solomon also married many women from surrounding nations, whom God had warned the Israelites not to intermarry with, such as Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. God had warned, "You shall not enter into marriage with them, neither shall they with you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods." Yet Solomon, out of love, or perhaps political calculation and passion, did not heed this command. To please his foreign wives in his multicultural harem, King Solomon went so far as to permit, and even directly build, shrines and places of worship for foreign gods on the hills surrounding Jerusalem, the holy city of God. He built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, on the hill opposite Jerusalem, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. Some of these deities, like Molech, were associated with horrific rituals such as child sacrifice. Not only did he permit it, but the scriptures also record that Solomon himself, in his later years, participated in the worship of these gods to please his wives. This act was a blatant betrayal of the covenant he had made with the Lord God, who had bestowed upon him wisdom, wealth, and glory. This greatly angered God. In the early years of his reign under Solomon's wise rule, Israel experienced a golden age. The land was prosperous, peaceful, and its people lived securely. Solomon's fame resounded everywhere, but gradually wisdom and wealth seemed unable to save Solomon from fatal mistakes. The king, once beloved by God, was ensnared by the traps of power, luxury, and carnal temptations. He slowly forgot the one who had given him everything. Political marriages, initially perhaps a wise strategy, ultimately became the cause of the dimming of the glory of a king once deeply loved by God. The Book of Kings poignantly records, "For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father." This apostasy did not escape God's notice. He appeared to Solomon again not to bless, but to warn and pronounce judgment. The Lord said to Solomon, "Since this has been your practice, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes that I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and will give it to your servant. Yet for the sake of David your father, I will not do it in your days, but I will tear it out of the hand of your son. However, I will not tear away all the kingdom, but I will give one tribe to your son, for the sake of David my servant, and for the sake of Jerusalem that I have chosen." This stern warning foreshadowed the decline not only of Solomon personally, but also of the united kingdom his father had painstakingly built. Division and future instability were predestined as an inevitable consequence of turning away from God. Throughout his 40-year reign, King Solomon amassed enormous wealth. The scriptures state that each year the gold Solomon received amounted to 666 talents, about 25 tons, not including revenue from trade, taxes, and tribute from vassal kings. He became one of the wealthiest kings in human history. His throne was made of ivory overlaid with pure gold, with intricate carvings. All the vessels in his palace, the king's drinking cups, were made of gold. Silver was considered of little value in Solomon's time. He also had a mighty fleet of ships, trading with distant lands like Tarshish, bringing back gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Solomon ascended the throne at a very young age, possibly around 12 to 20, and died around the age of 52 to 60. The original text's 52 seems a bit early for a 40-year reign, unless he was enthroned very young and died prematurely. He left posterity not only magnificent architectural works like the Temple of Jerusalem and the Royal Palace, but also priceless cultural legacies. He is traditionally credited as the author of the Book of Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Sublime Song of Songs in the Bible. These works contain wise teachings on life, morality, the fear of God, and profound reflections on the meaning of life. The artistic and intellectual heritage he left behind has inspired admiration and study for future generations. However, despite all his glory and wisdom, the end of Solomon's life was tinged with the tragedy of spiritual decline. After his death, God's prophecy was fulfilled. His wrathful intervention, as foretold, fell upon the kingdom. Israel, the mighty united nation, was torn into two separate kingdoms: the kingdom of Israel in the north, comprising 10 tribes, and the kingdom of Judah in the south, comprising the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, with Jerusalem as its capital. Subsequent generations of kings frequently betrayed the covenant with God, leading to weakness, invasion, and ultimately exile. God, in his mercy, continually sent prophets to warn, call for repentance, and teach his people. The story of Rehoboam, King Solomon's son, and the division of the kingdom, as well as the tales of great prophets like Elijah and Elisha, will be the next dramatic chapters in the history of the Israelite nation, which our channel will be pleased to share with you in future episodes. Looking back at the entire life and reign of King Solomon, primarily recorded in the first book of Kings and the second book of Chronicles, we see a vivid, multifaceted picture of glory and sin, wisdom and weakness in one man. Solomon began his reign with a humble heart, loyal to God, and was granted every blessing a king could dream of: unparalleled wisdom, boundless wealth, and a peaceful, prosperous kingdom. He built the temple for the Lord God and ruled his people with wisdom and justice. Yet even one so wise and favored was not immune to the snares of power, pride, and worldly temptations. The furnace of self-satisfaction, the influences from political marriages, and a gradual neglect of God's laws caused this great king's spiritual decline. His fall brought consequences not only for himself, but also sowed seeds of division and suffering for the very kingdom he once ruled with such splendor. The story of King Solomon is an eternal reminder that God's wisdom and blessings are precious gifts, but they demand a constantly vigilant heart, unwavering loyalty, and enduring humility. For the line between the pinnacle of glory and the abyss of ruin is sometimes shockingly thin. And that is the story of King Solomon, a journey from the heights of wisdom and power to the shadows of compromise and downfall. We hope that through this story, you've had moments of deep reflection. Don't forget, the lessons from the past always illuminate our path in the present. If you enjoy meaningful historical and spiritual stories like this, and want to explore more mysteries and valuable lessons from the Bible and ancient cultures with our channel, please hit the subscribe button right now. Every subscription is a great source of motivation for us to continue bringing you more quality and insightful content. Thank you sincerely for listening. We look forward to seeing you in our next stories.